Hi, my name is Katherine Madison, and today I will be talking about standardized testing and how it negatively affects students and teachers. What is standardized testing? A form of test that requires all test takers to answer the same question and it gets scored the same way. Standardized tests has been part of the American education since the 19th century. The test was first used when people entered the U.S. and tested their social rules and find social power and their status. Individual states began testing large numbers of children and teenagers through the public school system in the 1970s. With standardized tests, we got the No Child Left Behind Act in 2001, which held schools more accountable for students' achievements. The No Child Left Behind Act was passed in 2001 and signed by President George W. Bush. The increase of the federal role in the education system is holding schools more responsible for the progress of all of their students. This tied the public school funding into standardized tests. High scores became more important because the school districts used individual school testers' scores to evaluate each school. Also, the school rating are now linked to funding and teachers' evaluations. The state must test students in reading, math, and science starting in 3rd grade to 8th, and once in high school. The school must report the results for both the student population as a whole and for the subgroups of students. The subgroups are English learners, students in special education, minorities, and students that come from low-income families are part of that group. The AYP. The AYP is measured by students' achievements on state standardized tests, and the tests are the math, science, and English. The state and districts are held accountable for students' performances, and if the schools fail to meet the AYP at the end of the school semester, there are certain measures that are taken. Some of the measures can be if the school misses 2 years in a row of meeting the AYP, then all students are allowed to transfer to a better performing public school in their district, or the state can choose to shut down the school and make it into a charter school, and the state will take over. Questions on the test. The format is usually multiple choice, but they can include true and false, short answer, essay questions. Most of the time the test is multiple choice. These kind of test questions do not promote critical thinking skills and the ability to solve real-world problems. The test doesn't have anything that the students can connect to, so they can have a harder time understanding the question is asking because they can't connect their lives to the question. Standardized multiple choice tests cost less than the standardized essay writing test. The multiple choice test costs less because you can just have the computer scan the Scantron, and it will only take a couple hours, maybe a day or two, where the essay and the short answers has to be read by people, which can take multiple days to do, and multiple people to read them, and you have to pay the people to read them too. Teaching to the test. This phrase is used when the teachers are using excessive amount of time on the test preparation. Teachers are under pressure to show high scores on the test, and reputation are on the line for the teachers. Teaching this way can lead to a lack of creativity and limited students' learning potential due to boredom. No student wants to sit in front of their teacher and have them just read the PowerPoint. And the students rather be up and be more engaged in the learning of the lesson and watch videos, act out stuff. They'd rather be doing that than be sitting and watching a PowerPoint. I wanted to talk about this one article that I was reading. The article was called Why Standardized Testings Aren't Working for Teachers. To give a little background before I read the 2 quotes I have, the superintendents were talking to the principal at a school, and they were talking about how her one kindergarten class performed low on the test, but then her other 3 classes performed really high on the test. And this is what he had to say altogether. He pointed out that in one of my 4 kindergarten classes, the student scores were noticeably lower, while in another, the students were outperforming the other 3 classes. He recommended that I have the teachers whose class had scored low work directly with teachers who seemed to know how to get high scores from the students. And this was the principal's response to what he had to say. The underperforming kindergarten teachers and the high-performing teacher were one and the same person. I wanted to show you this part of the article because many people expect the teachers to show high test scores for all of their classes. But these tests shouldn't be held accountable for teachers being evaluated and how they teach their students, because all students do learn differently. Some students do have test anxiety and do not do good on tests, and that's could be why one of her classes were low performance, because they had a lot of kids who had test anxiety, and where her other class had students who really love taking tests and do well on them. So test anxiety. Students feel the pressure when it comes to performing well on a test. Doing bad on a test can develop a negative attitude towards their own ability and to the school. These tests don't represent students' abilities and what they know and how much they know. So students with test anxiety may have trouble performing the best on standardized tests, not because they don't know the answers, but because they're feeling too nervous to share what they have learned. Students with reading challenges may struggle with the wording of a math problem. So this will show not good test results on the math test because they really couldn't understand what the questions were asking them, because they couldn't understand the wording of the math problem. And also students can get confused with examples on a test that contain unfamiliar cultural references, and they may do poorly on the test. And these tests are telling us more about test takers' cultural familiarity than the actual academic learning. So these tests aren't really doing good for the students because they don't really understand what the test is asking them. So that's why many students do poorly on the test. And this is just my citation page, and this is all I have about why standardized testing is negatively affecting students and teachers. Thank you. Have a good day.